Adrian Petrie, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Pete. Good to see you, mate.
Are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm very well, thank you. Mate, welcome to Recruitment Journeys, the podcast series. Thank you so much for being involved, mate.
Thanks for having me, mate.
How's your lockdown experience treating you and your family? Are you battling through?
Yeah, I think it's not too dissimilar to anyone, really. You have your ups and downs, your good days and your bad days, days where you feel like you can tackle the world no matter what's being thrown at you.
Right.
And then other days where you're like, I'm over this. I've had enough.
Yeah.
I want to have some normality. So, yeah, same as everybody. We're doing the best we can and just, taking one step at a time.
Yeah, it's true, though. It's like I go to bed and I genuinely don't know. I don't really think about it, but I go to bed, I genuinely don't know how I'm going to feel when I wake up in the morning. Yep. The switch is either to the left or to the right. And you're either, whatever, COVID, ram it, or it just beats you down. It's surreal.
Yep, I feel you, my friend.
It's a roller coaster ride, genuinely. Right. So thank you for being involved. Is this, you're a relatively young bloke, you wouldn't have done many podcasts in your life. Is this your first, second, third?
Second, actually. So, yeah, you're right. This is pretty new to me.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, maybe you can show me a few tricks.
Yeah. Don't know about that, mate, but we'll see how we go.
So, mate, look, I've already given the listeners and the viewers a bit of an introduction as to who Adrian Petrie is, but in your own words, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Adrian Petrie. I'm from Melbourne in Australia. Been in the recruitment game for 5 years now. Thoroughly enjoy that. And I used to be a semi-professional basketball referee. So that was something that I got heavily involved in prior to recruitment. And I wrote a book. And that kind of summarizes me, mate.
So you're an interesting bloke. This is why I've invited you onto the podcast. So you and I know each other, Adrian, but I've never really asked you about the basketball stuff. Why did you become a referee? Sorry, I'm going off a tangent here. Why did you become a referee because you weren't a very good player? What was the deal?
Well, yes, eventually, that's correct. So to start with, I was about 15 years old and Mum gave me a bit of the riot act and she said, right, it's time to get a job, mate. You can either go to the local basketball stadium, which was around the corner, or you can go to Macca's. But wherever you go, I'm not driving you there. You get yourself to work.
No.
All right, well, I don't want to stand behind a counter all day. I like basketball. I play it. So let's go referee. And, at the time, at 15, 16 years old, I had aspirations just like most kids to play in the NBA. I thought I was going to be this big, basketball player. It was going to be great. But quickly learned that I didn't have that skill. And I was very, very average, to say the least, as a player. But I enjoyed the refereeing. I wasn't bad at it. And it sort of just grew innately from there until I got to a point where I was about 18 years old and I realized, okay, now this is the time where you need to be breaking into the professional ranks if you haven't already. Yeah. And I'm so far away from that. But I'm starting to climb the ladder as a referee. So I decided to pursue that and stop playing.
Yeah. So were you a paid basketball referee?
Yeah. At the start, you're paid, it depends on your level basically, but you're paid, between 10 to $20, depending on your level per game.
Yeah.
It's just pocket money. It's a bit of cash and it's a bit of fitness running up and down the court. You learn some communication skills, stakeholder skills, that type of thing. And then as you climb, then yes, it depends on the level of game that you're officiating. Some, like national tournaments, unfortunately weren't paid. So you could be spending a week anywhere in Australia and you're refereeing the best kids, because it was juniors around the country. That wasn't paid, unfortunately, but it was a bit of a status thing to be selected there.
Yeah, good for your CV. Good for your CV. Yeah. It would have been good at dealing with confrontation as well. If you've got like a 6'8", 22-year-old squaring up to you, challenging you, that'd be quite an experience, quite scary.
Totally, mate. So that was more prevalent in the seniors.
Yeah.
But I'm 6'1", so I'm not a short bloke. Just sort of relatively average height. But I was a midget on a basketball court. So, like, you're throwing the ball up, and these guys are, like you say, 6'10", 6'11". They're American imports. This is their career. They're trying to break to the next level. They're paid. So everything's highly, highly scrutinized. and more or less you're the most hated person in the venue.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you do, you're going to annoy someone. So it taught me some awesome skills.
I could just imagine some big American saying, "Who's this little 6'1" short ass Australian bloke trying to tell me about what to do in my game?" Mate, we digress. That was a bit of a tangent I wasn't expecting to go on. Look, I will very quickly explain the concept of the podcast. It's called Recruitment Journeys. It's our second series now, and as it says on the tin, I've got to start thinking of something alternative to say than as it says on the tin. That's what I say every time. But as it says on the tin, we approach and we speak to selected recruitment identities who have got a story to tell, who've got a journey, and the idea is to inspire, motivate, educate people who might listen to your story, Adrian, and say, "I think that's pretty cool. That's something that I'd like to aspire to do." So it's an opportunity to hear from you, somebody who's done it before. You are, for the purpose of this podcast interview, and we're going to have to put you into a box, you are the recruiter who wrote a book. Because I've been doing this job for 16 years, 17 years. I don't think apart from Greg Savage, I don't think I've ever met a recruiter who's wrote a book. Certainly at the early stage of their career. A lot of them I would imagine there would be some books written by people who've been in the game for 20, 30 years. And actually, I think Andrew Banks, who started Morgan Banks, I think he's got a book, but you're quite a young guy. So I'm interested to know about the creative scratch or itch that you needed to scratch, but we'll get into that. But let's just go back in time, Adrian, if we can. Can you tell the viewers and the listeners how and why you broke into the wonderful world of recruitment?
Yeah, totally. So I think it's not too dissimilar to a lot of recruiters out there. Everyone sort of talks about how they got into it, and the overwhelming conversation that I've been involved in is I fell into it. And that was exactly what happened to me. I was at one of those national tournaments, and a guy that I met was from Sydney, and he was working in recruitment at the time. And I was coming towards the end of my university degree, and I was looking for a job. And at that particular point in time, I was just applying for anything and everything. Now, no, that's not the way to do it, but that's what I was doing, 5+ years ago. And he was telling me about what he did in recruitment and how every day was different and, what it entailed. I thought to myself, I reckon I've got some skills that I could add value in that type of world. And as luck so happened to play out, when I got back from that tournament, that championship at the end of the week, I was going through my job search, and the company that he worked for popped up, and I put in an application, ended up bugging the hell out of the, at the time, HR manager. Once again, that's not how you do it, but that's what I did. Ended up getting a phone interview, and I was actually really, really lucky here. I had done a ton of research on every company that I applied for before I put in an application. But for whatever reason, my inexperience, I blurted out when they said, "What do you know about our company?" I'd blurt out, "Oh, not much." I don't know where it came from, but that's what I did. And anyway, this particular HR woman, she said, "So what do you know about us and the work that we do?" And I spat that out, and I'm like, "Oh, Adrian, you do have a rough idea of what goes on because you've done the homework." And God bless her, because she got me in the door. She said, "Okay, what I want you to do is go away, have a read about who we are and what we do, and then come back to me." And I was like, "Hang on, wait. Before you go, sorry, I don't know why I said that. Actually, this is what I do know." And I was so thankful that she gave me that opportunity, because if I was the HR manager, I would have said, "This kid's done no research, thanks, but no thanks."
Yeah.
And anyway, I said, "Actually, this is what I know." And she goes, "Oh, so you have done a little bit of homework. Cool. Come in for a face-to-face interview." And then we went through the process from there, face-to-face, which was then a group interview effectively. I got in there and I was in a room full of experienced recruiters or people who had been in various industries. And I was this fresh-faced kid just straight out of uni. I thought, I'm in trouble here. What have I got to offer amongst these guys? So I thought to myself, well, what's the worst case that happens? I butcher this. I'm never going to see these people again. I might as well just go for it and give it a crack. And obviously I was good enough, and then went to the final stage interview and landed the position. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you did and you didn't fall into it. It kind of the stars aligned, and you'd heard about this recruitment thing by somebody in your basketball network, but you kind of scrapped for it, right? You had to you had a few interviews and you had to kind of do a bit of a dance, and you had to go and sit in a room with 12, 15 other people to get the gig. That's not necessarily falling into it. It wasn't handed to you on a plate.
Fair. It wasn't handed to me. Did have to scrap, but the stars aligned. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. So you then went on to have. So obviously, we're not going to dissect all of your career because that's not necessarily what we're here to talk about today. You then went into and had in your first recruitment role 5 years with a big global brand. You achieved some reasonable success in there. Did some big billings. Won a couple of awards along the way. So it was a good first shift in recruitment. When you kind of take stock and reflect and look back on your time, your first few years in recruitment, what goes through your mind?
The overarching thing that goes through my mind is hard work. Recruitment's a hard game. You're in between your candidates and your clients, and you're trying to build a personal brand on both sides of that coin. And there's a lot of sacrifice that goes in along the way. I remember my first 6 months, I didn't make a placement. I thought, I'm going to lose my job here. I was slogging away. I was talking to as many people as I could, but it seemed like it wasn't going anywhere. I later learned that all of those things that I was doing at the beginning formed the foundations for momentum down the track, which is what saw me have a little bit of success. But hard work is the key. There's a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of late nights. Doing things that you might not be comfortable doing in the beginning, but that's all part of the journey. But it's super rewarding when you can have an impact on somebody's life and, they come and thank you. They've got the job of their dreams. You've helped a business solve their problems by getting the person that they require to take them to the next level. There's a lot of hard work to get to that point, but when you do, super, super fulfilling. So that's what comes to mind.
It's often overlooked, that part of recruitment, the part of recruitment where you do change lives. You can change lives. I think you and I had a conversation. Sometimes you make a placement and emotionally it doesn't really connect with you that much, and you make the placement and you sort of move on. But sometimes you help people who really want and need and appreciate your help. And you put them into a great role, and 7 years later they're still there, and you think, you know what, I was involved in that. It's nice.
Totally.
It's nice.
And you have a deep connection with them, a long-standing relationship. That stuff is great for recruiters who are passionate about what they do.
So there you are. You're trucking away. Things are going well in your first role in recruitment. Like I say, you're billing well, and getting a few accolades along the way. And then presumably somewhere in that kind of 5-year period, you start thinking about this book. At what point did the seed plant in your brain that you might want to go and write a book?
Yeah, it was kind of a dramatic shift for me, if you will, Pete. Because that wasn't something that was ever on my to-do list. It wasn't something that was ever a goal for me. It sort of happened a little bit innately as my role developed in recruitment. So I had a particular client that I'd spent a number of years building really deep-seated relationships with. It was great. I felt like a partner to their business, and what you just described, I felt like, hey, I'm having a contribution to, the work that they're delivering and the people that they have there. I feel proud of that. I'm a connected individual to that. We fast forward a few years later, and they had a huge shift in their executive team. And basically they brought on a whole heap of new directors, and their objective was to shake things up for whatever reason. But they ended up hurting a lot of people in that process. And I had a lot of people coming to me going, Adrian, we feel really conflicted here. This was home to us for a large number of years. We loved this place. They nurtured us. They developed us. They challenged us. They pushed us to be better. But now we feel like we're just being used and abused, and we no longer feel like we're family. And I could hear the hurt and the pain in all of these people's voices and on their faces. And I also felt the same way, because I felt like I was a partner to this organization, but now I was being pushed aside. So at the time, I'm maybe 24, 25 years old. And I tried consulting to these guys. I tried saying, hey, are you aware that, the change in approach that you're having is perhaps having an adverse effect from what you're trying to achieve. You're hurting a lot of people, and subsequently they're not doing, work that they used to the same high standard. So your customers, your stakeholders aren't getting the same quality products. Are you aware of this sort of stuff? And over the course of 6 months, the resounding feedback that I got was, bugger off, mate, we'll do things our way. And as a passionate person who just genuinely wants to help people, that was a tough lesson to learn, where I was almost put back in my box. This little kid trying to help a huge organization. I quickly learned it wasn't going to happen. So I thought, okay, what can I do? I'm not the type of person to just wipe my hands and go, oh, bad luck, off you go, and, suck it up type of thing. I thought, what can I do to help? Maybe I can't impact these people, but maybe I can stop other businesses around the world from treating people in this way. Maybe I can get through to a smaller business owner and maybe help him or her to connect better with his or her staff, and then subsequently run a more successful business because their people are engaged. And so I thought, what could I do here? I thought, how could I possibly help? And by nature, I was a pretty good writer. So I thought maybe I could put together some sort of ebook. Maybe I could get that out to, if I get that to one small business owner who manages 5 staff, maybe that's 5 lives that I could change, plus the owner's life, 6 lives. What if I could get that to 2 business owners? Maybe that's 12 lives. And so on and so forth. I thought maybe I can make an impact, make a difference here. And it's kind of where the itch started from, was from that tough experience where a lot of people were hurting to, hey, maybe I can impact that in some way.
Hey, that's fascinating. That's genuinely fascinating. So you basically started thinking about writing a book because, as you said, you got put back in your box because you were trying to have a voice about something that you instinctively felt quite passionate about, and your advice and your opinions were rejected and ignored.
Absolutely.
And the book was an opportunity for you to put your thoughts and feelings out there.
Yeah, try and help.
So okay, all right. So at this juncture, you should probably tell us what the book is called and what it really focuses on. Because I actually don't know.
Yeah, so the book is called Lead from the Front: How to Unlock Your Team's True Potential.
Okay.
And it is all about, I'm just having a look around to see if I've got a hard copy floating somewhere. I don't. But
Okay.
It's all about leadership. It's all about team management. It's all about bringing together your number one asset, or what I believe is your number one asset in business, your people, and how to achieve the best results possible. And so that encapsulates looking after them, making work a place where they feel proud to come to each day. They feel connected to a bigger vision, but then also pushing them to be the best that they can be so the business can deliver real results. So it's a balancing act between caring and supporting for your people, but also pushing them to be the best versions of themselves possible. Because as a business owner or as a leader, that's when you have the most success in your team or in your organization. That's my belief. And that's the premise of the book, and how to get the best out of your people so you can deliver results for your organization.
Okay. All right. So how do I phrase this next question respectfully? How, as a 24, 25-year-old, did you feel that you had the kind of life experience, business experience to write this book? Why did you feel that your business philosophies were worthy of a book?
Yeah, great question.
Oh, thanks.
So
that was just off the top of my head as well.
So the book it's not just what is Adrian Petrie's perspective. I did a lot of research into leadership and business before I even began undertaking it. I studied management at university, so I have some formal qualifications there. But really, the book doesn't talk about formal study in that perspective. To be brutally honest, Pete, I hated my time in university. I hated it. It was 4 years of what I thought was nonsense. And it was just fluff to fill out a course with content that really didn't, hit hard with what you needed to achieve. However, the overarching premise of that management degree, and I majored in HR and commercial law, was connect with your people, understand what motivates them and what makes them tick, and then use that as leverage to push them forward and to make them be the best that they can be. So I got that from a formal perspective. I was really blessed to be mentored by a career CEO. That was a relationship that I, again, kind of the stars aligned, fell into through a lot of hard work, once again, in recruitment. He was a career CEO. He worked internationally and in Australia. He was responsible for over $100 billion throughout his career. He managed over 10,000 staff throughout his career. He was an advisor to 2 ex-Australian prime ministers. He sat on their advisory panel.
Wow.
So he was the real deal. And over the course of time, we built a relationship together. And he taught me a lot about leadership, how to work with people, how to get the most out of people, how to have integrity and respect as you did it, and all that sort of stuff around that. And then from my own personal experience in business, I worked with some of what I believed were some of the best leaders in the recruitment industry, some that I respected really, really highly. And I watched what they did and I observed. And then I picked out bits from what they did and added that into my own toolkit. And then I watched what I believed were some of the poorer leaders do. And I compared the differences and I went, right, this is how these successful guys get results. And these are the problems that these unsuccessful leaders are having. And I think I can see why. And then I sort of coupled that with, formal education, with my own research, my own experience, my sporting experience, which was how I brought, random teams of referees from all over the country together to produce a high quality result and to be on the same page as much as possible. And I encapsulated all of that. So yeah, I didn't have 20, 30, 40 years of, corporate leadership experience, but what I had was a lot of people experience. And that was what made my team successful in business, my team successful in basketball. And then, for guys like this CEO who had been there and done that for decades prior. So I encapsulated all that together.
Yeah, perfect. What an answer. But, who's to say, look, we all just automatically assume that because somebody's writing a book who's been in business for 50 years, that's the oracle of business and, all those lessons. But who's to say that, a younger person's perspective and outlook on life and outlook on business and outlook on management and leadership, that their opinions are as valid, especially in this day and age. All right, cool. So there you are. It's all formulating in your brain, but you've also got a day job, right? How do you juggle, a busy recruitment career with the pursuit of the dream of writing a book?
Look, again, it comes down to that hard work piece. So anybody who is really passionate about what they do in recruitment knows that they probably work 50, 60, maybe 70 hours a week. So to fit things in outside of that can be really tough. So for me, 6 months of my life was sacrificed with working my butt off in recruitment and then coming home and more or less sacrificing everything other than writing. So I had a schedule. I'd block out my work time in my week. And then each evening I'd go, okay, I reckon I can fit in, an hour's writing here, 2 hours writing there. Maybe one night, if I was in the flow, there's 3 hours. And then the weekends were really the days that I got to go all in on that. But that was life for 6 months or so. A lot of sacrifice there. I learned some lessons about myself because I probably sacrificed too much. So when I finished the book, I did end up getting a little bit sick because I'd run my body into the ground. I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't eating as healthily as I used to. I wasn't training like I used to.
Wow.
So I learned some lessons about balance there. However, to answer your question, it was just a lot of sacrifice and it was really recruitment and then writing. That was my life for 6 months.
From the point that the book first appeared in your head to the point where you had the first edition in your hand, how long did that take?
It took just over 6 months.
Wow.
Printing and the cleanup with the publishers. Sorry, I apologize. That probably took about 7 to 8 weeks all up. So let's say about 8 months. But I would have envisioned, and this will be a cool story I'm sure we'll come to soon, but I would have envisioned the book would have taken between 12 to 18 months. So we really had to speed that up with a challenge that my partner and I received from Grant Cardone, a big entrepreneur.
Okay, all right. Well, okay. So you've segued into a cool story. Tell us the cool story, please.
So my partner Beck, she was writing a book at the same time as I was, and hers was on, igniting spark, women's empowerment, basically, which I knew nothing about, but turns out to be a massive, massive space. And anyway, we went to a Grant Cardone business boot camp up in Sydney. So I'm from Melbourne, like I mentioned.
So tell us who that gentleman is, please.
Grant Cardone. So he is an entrepreneur, big businessman. He has about 15 different companies. As of today, about a $1.5 billion property portfolio. He's a business mogul. He's a beast.
Okay.
And Beck and I went to his business boot camp. And we didn't know much about it, but we wanted to see what this thing was all about because we had, passions and interests outside of what we did in our roles. And we were both in recruitment at that time. And anyway, cut a long story short, I'm sitting in there with a room full of multimillionaires, big dog business owners. Probably quickly learnt that we were in the wrong room to begin with, but that's where we were. And we were sitting at the front of the room. We're on these VIP tables. And at the end of each day, he went around the tables and asked someone to give their key take home on, X, Y, Z, whatever we had discussed. And for me, I'm generally the type of person that likes to, just sit back, absorb information, sort of stay quiet. But I knew that to get the most out of this event, I had to get involved. I couldn't just sit there, observe and take notes. So when the microphone came to our table, I had a quick look around. Nobody said anything. So I put my hand up to answer the question. We're in a room full of about 500 people and a guy runs around, microphone's handed to me, camera is in my face. And this big entrepreneur, Grant Cardone, is like, so what was your key take home? And I answered gave my response, answered the question. And then he said, what's your business, sir? Tell me about it. And I said, oh, look, I'm in a slightly different position to everyone else here. I'm writing a book. And Beck had said the phrase, she was trying to write a book as well. And Grant made a huge lesson out of us in front of the crowd. He said, guys, what's this trying? He's like, you either are or you aren't. There's no middle ground. He said, so many people get caught up in trying to do something that they never launch it or get it out into the world because they're trying to make it perfect. He said, I'm a best-selling author. And do you know how many people come up to me all the time and say, Grant, you've got these mistakes here in your book and this mistake here. And he's like, I just laugh. He's like, I don't care. It's out. People are buying it. People love my stuff. They know who I am. It's about speed. He's like, don't confuse this with putting out a crap product. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to actually remove that perfectionist piece and just get things out into the market. And so he made a huge example of us, but then he said, tell you what, if you guys finish your books by the end of the week, I'll promote them across my channels. And so his channels on social media are millions of followers. This was a Monday, so the end of the week was obviously...
So this challenge was laid down to Beck as well?
Yes.
Right.
So both of us, and he said, if you get your books done by the end of the week, I'll promote it. And so like Beck and I are kind of like, whoa, oh my God, what just happened? A couple of minutes later, the microphone goes around the room and somebody else answers her question. She goes, I'm actually the CEO of a publishing company and I want to help those guys get their books done professionally. And so by this stage, Beck and I are like, what the hell is happening? Like an hour ago, this was not on the cards. So anyway, it's one thing to say that, but it's another thing is anyone actually going to follow up through this? Susan, her name was, from Dean Publishing. We are forever indebted to her. Susan came and found us and she said, are you the guys that are writing the books? Because she was on the other side of the room. Yes, we are. She basically said, you know why he'll say this, right? She said, anyone can get up on stage and say anything to a crowd full of people, but 9 out of 10 people know that they will never follow through. So, he's not concerned about saying that. So we're gonna have to go all in to make this happen and prove him wrong. I went, okay, cool, let's do it. We went, I had a photo with Grant at the end of the day. I said, Grant, were you being serious? Will you actually promote our books on your channels if we get this done? And he flat out laughed in my face. He said, mate, there's not a hope in hell that you're getting this done in a week. But sure, if you do, I will, but it's not going to happen. And the ambition part of me kicked in. I went, right, you're on, mate. And, we worked around the clock, like the publisher said, and we got it done within that week. So we got to work with one of his marketing directors and then we got this thing produced into a hard copy book and he promoted it. So it was a pretty cool story. 5 days.
You finished the book in 5 days.
Yep. So for me, I was about halfway through. But the second half was a lot of hard work. And then Beck was at a very different stage. She was having some issues getting her ideas onto paper. So we more or less had to sort of think tank this thing together and guide Beck and go, okay, here's the frameworks of what you're trying to say. go and put it into paper. So we kind of had to help one another with that, and we got it done.
Wow. So, okay, so it was promoted by Grant.
Yep.
What sort of impact did that have on the success of the book, and how has the book gone?
Yeah, so this is funny. So as far as the impact that it has, everyone's like, oh, you got to work with Grant on this. This is really cool. But what I don't tell people, but I'm going to tell you and your listeners, Pete, is that Grant got my name and the title of the book wrong. So he got Beck's right, but he held up the book and he's like, this is Lead from the Point. It's called Lead from the Front.
Yeah.
And he's like, by Andrea. My name's Adrian.
Yeah.
So it actually made for a really funny story, but one of his presidents actually, you know, pulled that apart. And again, he's got probably close to 100,000 followers. And he actually did a little post for me to say, it's not Andrea, this is Adrian, this is his book, go check it out type of thing. And funnily enough, it didn't have a huge impact as far as sales went, which was a really important lesson for me, that nobody's going to do anything for you. And it didn't matter what his name was and who he was and what he did to promote it. You actually have to do all the hard work yourself. So it made from an awesome story that I can promote from a marketing perspective, but his actual, you know, him holding the book up with his face didn't make a huge deal of difference. So it was a good lesson for me.
So how's the book gone then?
It's gone well. It's gone well. The idea of the book was never to... I'm never going to be a millionaire from selling a book. Very, very few people in this world are. Like I said, the idea of the book was to make an impact, to also be seen as somebody who has a different string to their bow. I had candidates and clients reaching out to me going, you wrote a book? That's a bit different. Tell me about that experience. And then subsequently that turned into conversations of, hey, can you help me with my business? Or, you know, can you help me get a job? And that type of thing. And that was part of the mentality going, I'm not going to become a millionaire selling this book. That's not the purpose. But this is going to open the door to conversations with candidates, clients, business owners, that type of thing, that can give me a little bit of credibility, can separate me from the rest of the pack, because recruitment's a really, really saturated marketplace. And this will just open that door to more conversations. So from that perspective, it's gone really, really well.
I just go back to something that you said, which I love, and I sort of live my life a little bit by is when you said, look, don't people get hung up on perfection, and they're paralyzed by their fear that something that they're trying to do or say or create isn't going to be received, or it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be well received because it's not perfect. I think there's a phrase, done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
Which is, get it out, just get it out, get it into the world, let people see it, and if it's not quite right, it doesn't really matter. At least you tried.
Totally, that's my new favorite phrase, mate, and I learned that from Grant that day. Done is better than perfect. And for me, I'm the type of guy that will think, hey, if I put something out and I try something new and it flops, well, at least I can go to bed happy that I gave it a crack. And you can always iterate and fix and improve down the line. But where, in my opinion, a lot of people fall short, because I was trying to do this myself, is you try to make it so perfect that you actually never end up getting anything done, because you can be in this, mode of iterating, editing, cleaning, improving, making better forever. You can do that till the day that you die. There comes a point where you have to go, this is good enough. This is high quality. I'm not just skimming the surface. This is high quality. It's good enough. This is going to help people. Let's go. Let's make it happen and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And it lends itself to kind of, LinkedIn as well. I know that you've done a bit of, LinkedIn content. Sometimes you can, sometimes something pops into your head and you whack it out and you put it out. You haven't really given it that much thought, and it's certainly quite imperfect. And it's well received, and it kind of explodes. And other times you'll think of something and you'll analyze it for days, and you'll do a draft and then a second draft and a third draft, and you'll think, oh my God, this is amazing. This is going to change lives. You put it out and it just falls on its ass. So anyway, all right, mate, cool. So what's next, mate? Is there another book in you? What's next for Adrian Petrie?
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if there is another book in me somewhere, but that's years down the track. That's not my focus right now. I've done that. I've scratched that itch. I'm excited to continue my recruitment career, and I've got a new challenge. I'm moving into a new company now. So really building things out for those guys. I'm super, super pumped to be there. Thank you to you, Pete, who helped me to get that job. But yeah, what are the next steps? The next steps is put my head down, work hard, and do all the things that I did in my first stint in recruitment, replicate that now in a new company.
I have absolutely no doubts, even with this global pandemic, that you won't be an absolute success in that role, mate. I think anything you turn your hand to, you'll generally give it your all, and that's generally enough for success, right? In closing, mate, it's been a fascinating conversation. It really has. But in closing, going back to the concept and the purpose of the podcast, it's all about inspiring and motivating. What advice would you give to anybody out there, a recruiter or indeed a non-recruiter who has this burning itch, this desire to do something? And they might love their day job, they might love their job in recruitment and have a wonderful career, but there's something just niggling at them.
Yeah.
What advice would you give those people?
My advice would be do it. Life's too short not to do it. If you're in a day job, that has to be your priority. That's what pays your bills. That's your career. And something that you're passionate about is something that you do on the side. But in my opinion, there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing something on the side, so long as it doesn't impact your performance. But do it. Don't die with regrets. For me, and I know this sounds a little bit somber, but for me, I will die a happy man if I'm on my deathbed and I go, I gave everything a crack. If I failed miserably, but I gave it a real red hot crack, and I'm not just talking about once or twice, I'm talking about sacrifice and, getting knocked down and getting back up for years and years. And then if it doesn't work, you go, hey, it wasn't meant to be. But if you don't really try your hardest, if you don't put in 110% every single day, in my opinion, we'll come to the end of our lives and go, what if? And I don't want that. And I'm sure most people out there don't want that either. So whatever it is for you, whether it's, hey, I want to get to, I want to be a 500K biller in recruitment. I want to be $1 million biller. I want to write a book. I want to lose 20 kilos, whatever it is, whatever you want to do, just don't die wondering. That would be my advice. Give it your all.
Perfect. What a wonderful way to end the conversation. Adrian, mate, thank you so much. This was inspiring, even to an old fart like me.
Thank you for your time, Pete. It was awesome to chat to you, mate. I love it.
Mate, thank you so much. We will speak very soon. All the best.
Yes. Take care, mate. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.